this year in the art world was definitely something. A lot of things shifted. And I don't know that I want to say it was a bad thing. I would like to say that this year was necessary in many moments. And I want to talk about some of the defining things that happened this year that will define how we walk into 2026. If you're new here, I'm Mariah Elise, and this channel makes the art world make sense. So let's break down the 10 moments that didn't just define the art world, but they revealed how we're strong, where we're cracked, and where we're headed. The very first thing that we have to talk about, because this set the tone for a lot of the year, is that political pressure tightened the cultural imagination. We have to think about how the Trump administration had an effect on museum culture this year. The Smithsonian Review wasn't a headline, but it was this really large spread temperature check. You have to know that whenever politics tighten its grip, whenever politics have the tensions that it's had in the last 2 years, you will see cultural imagination, risk-taking, shrink, contract within museum culture. It's not because the artists stopped making brave work. It's not because the curators no longer want to show work that tells true stories. It is because everything that surrounds it is afraid of what the administration can do to create an environment where museums, where institutions become afraid that funding will get lost, and the list goes on. It's because the folks that are giving money to the museums have a shift in their behavior as well. Because institutions and the people around it become afraid to show and to go against what the administration is asking, is telling them to do. What's really happening underneath this moment is a recalibration of power and who defines American history and who gets to tell the story of American history, who gets to tell the truth, and who is allowed to be visible in American history. Institutions are becoming extremely cautious, and it's not because they lack the courage. No. I think they still have courage. But do they have the courage, I will ask, to go outside of the institutions and still show this brave work? This is happening because political pressure really sharpens and quietly sharpens funding and staffing and acquisitions and what feels safe. This isn't necessarily about censorship. It starts with censorship, but that censorship starts to kind of create this pre-censorship. And it's the kind of censorship that institutions begin to do to themselves. They begin to have meetings about what they're going to show, what they're not going to show, because they don't want to offend a specific group of people. What does that mean for a year like 2026? I believe that we're entering into a year where independent platforms and alternative spaces and artist-driven ecosystems are going to matter so much more than ever. The second thing that I want to touch on is the loss of Koyo. That created a global void. Koyo wasn't just a curator. She was a global compass. Someone whose curatorial language gave form and legitimacy across Africa and its diaspora. And her passing didn't just leave a vacancy in leadership. It created a vacuum in a global narrative direction that she understood and that she was willing to tell the story of. She understood something many institutions still struggle with, that contemporary African art is not a theme nor a trend, and it's not emerging. It is a worldview. And now that she's gone, the question, at least for me, is who continues that clarity in that way? Maybe no one, not in that way, but someone's gonna pick up where she left off, I'm sure of it. And what does this really mean for a year like 2026? Well, we're entering a season of inheritance, and her generation, her practice laid groundwork. And then in the next generation, I'm sure will now claim authorship of it. Number 3, the middle market didn't collapse, but I do believe it outgrew its cage. Galleries didn't close because art stopped mattering, because the art wasn't good. They closed because of infrastructure. They closed because the 20th century business model finally cracked. High rent, high fare fees, which is still a thing, lower foot traffic, collectors who research. But now what we're looking at are a group of collectors who thoroughly research on many different levels before they walk in the door. And we also have educators that are educating curators, that are educating collectors. We have an art buying public, an art collecting public that's trained by social media to discover work directly from artists, to ask questions, to ask invigorating questions, to ask for transparency. The middle market didn't die, but it molted, and it shed an old shell that could no longer contain the way art moves in 2025. Now, the question is, what does this really mean? The gallery renaissance will be architectural, and it will be digital, and it will be relational, more relational than it's ever been. But see, I don't think it's the type of relation that it used to be. It's a new type of relationship. The new gallery is better at media. They're a cultural partner. You might see multiple galleries continuing to partner up. You might see galleries partnering with independent groups. You may see galleries engaging in collector research, engaging in collector education. Galleries are beginning to engage more in storytelling, public storytelling. The gallery model has to become more involved with the public, more involved with education, more involved with media. The gallery world is 10 years behind other industries who have been telling stories on Instagram and been telling stories through media. It's a new era for the way that galleries interact with the public. And if you're a gallery that doesn't catch up to that, you're a gallery that will be left behind, just like the galleries that closed this year. And I'm not saying that they closed because they didn't keep up with media. They closed for a lot of reasons. And I'm not going to be the one that say I know it all and I know these individual gallery stories, because I do not. But what I do know, what has to be clear, is that the right type of infrastructure just couldn't have been there. So let's move on to number 4, the Klimt $236 million sale. We already talked about that. It's a big moment of this year. Now, unlike a lot of folks, I do believe that if you looked into why their artwork sold at the price that it sold, that it continues to show us that provenance is important. The sale of that work is a teacher for us. It continues to teach us and show us that memory, that power, that provenance matters. It was really easy, I would say, to see a price, to see the $236 million and just see that. But what they missed was the story. And if you want to know more about why that sold for the number that it sold, click the link above me and I did an entire video telling you more. Art is a vehicle for power, for mobility, for money, for legacy, and for cross-border survival. And restitution work will continue to shape and reshape the market as long as it's rediscovered and as long as it's brought back to market. Because collectors, they do want artifacts with moral weight and historical resonance. I want to point out that moments like this, when work sells for such high numbers, because they create so much momentum, it allows people like me, the many people that exist across social media, it allows advisors, it allows curators to be in conversation and educate on why things like this sell at that high number. It allows a moment for education, which I believe many moments and all the moments that we're talking about today allow for. And that's why I get excited about moments like this. Not because I'm excited that someone has $236 million at the drop of a dime, but it excites me because it's going to happen anyway, that we have now a moment to dig into, to research, to understand, and to educate. That brings me to Frida Kahlo and how her record was a bit of a correction, but not a surprise, because women are collecting. I don't know if a woman collected. Women are collecting at a very high number, and Latin American artists are being collected at a very high number right now. This was the highest price ever paid for a woman artist and the highest for a Latin American artist. And a lot of people ask, well, why is that happening now? Why now? It's because markets always lag behind the truth. and markets follow where the culture is headed. And Frida's global presence, her influence on identity and feminism and fashion, and also disability in portraiture has been a canon for many, many, many decades. 2025 was simply the year that the market caught up. But what does this really mean? Well, I think we all know that the canon is expanding, but it's not happening randomly. It's expanding towards people whose work has already been carrying a ton of culture, and that's whether institutions acknowledged it or not. Number 6, private sales quietly replaced a lot of auction sales as cultural gatekeepers. And the question wasn't, are auctions losing power? Because a lot of these private sales happen via the auction houses anyway. The real question was, who's controlling the flow of information? Private sales via the auction are now dominating because the wealthiest buyers did not want to be a spectacle this year. And it's not that they're always outed as the person who's acquiring the work, but they definitely want to be more strategic. They definitely want more anonymity, and they definitely want leverage. They want access to works that the public doesn't even know are available. And that shift reveals a much, much bigger truth in the scheme of it all. The most important art world decisions now are happening in rooms with even less cameras, even less bidding paddles, even less headlines. So I think it's really interesting is in a world that is asking for more transparency, and also in a world that more transparency is being created, also more discretion is being created. Number 7. Well, we're just off of Basel and Basel continues to be the center of a global culture and not just global art. Basel 2025 was a continuation of what continues to feels like a cultural summit of tech, of sports, of music, of fashion, and of every industry touching down and touching hands. This wasn't really a coincidence. This has been happening for years. This was a convergence. The world is craving spaces where creativity, money, innovation, and influence intersect. And because of social media, because of the storytelling, because of galleries and museums and institutions being more transparent, folks are understanding more about how the art world works, but they're also understanding more about where the art world comes to place, and they're going there. And they're also understanding the money that circulates within these spaces. And so they're capitalizing on those spaces. Fairs are definitely what fairs are, but fairs are also becoming a bit of a market, and the momentum of the fair is being used to amplify other industries. They are a place where industries collide and new cultural directions are really drafted in real time. Number 8, Gen Z collectors are changing the rules of engagement. Gen Z is the first generation to enter the art world with an expectation of transparency. And we've said that word a few times within this video. And we've also said discretion. And so I don't know if you can tell that it's a pull and a push. It's a tug of war that's kind of going on right now, because I do also believe you still have those millennials and you still have those Gen Zers who want discretion. So it's a tug and a pull between where to land. But I think it's important to know that they're not just seeking transparency because they distrust the art world, but it's because they were raised in a world where information is abundant and instant and free. And that's why I do believe you have the group that wants that continuation, but you also have the group that don't. They don't want that. Some of them want to publicly understand why a work matters, how a price forms, and what the artist stands for. And they want that through channels like this. They want that through the Instagram channels that we see that are sharing information. They want to know what the market trajectory looks like. They want to know what they are participating in. And they're not just looking at buying objects. They're buying alignment. And this generation will continue to democratize collecting simply by refusing to participate in systems that hide meaning. And that brings me to number 9. artist agency becomes the cultural standard. And we have to talk about Amy Sherrod in this moment, because Amy Sherrod pulling out of her National Portrait Gallery exhibition after they considered removing a painting, that was not an isolated moment. I will say that a lot of times, I will say that I believe and I know that that happens often, but her making the declaration that representation is not permission was a really big thing. That was huge for her to do. Representation is partnership, and artists at her caliber are no longer grateful just to be included. They are definitely defining the terms. What this moment exposed is a new cultural truth, and it's that artists with clarity aren't afraid to walk away. But I think we also have to take a moment to understand that she has a certain level of power, and every artist isn't going to do that. Some artists are going to be afraid to do that. But I think that it's going to create an environment with institutions, that institutions with integrity are not going to be afraid to adjust. And I hope that we see that more, but I hope that artists don't take advantage of it. I hope that they do that in a well thought out moment, and that partnerships and thoughtful conversations can happen when an artist doesn't agree with something that the institution does, and that the institution doesn't agree with something that the artist does. But I also believe that you have to have the gumption, and you have to be very, very understanding and true, and have clarity in what you believe in order to do exactly what Amy Sherrod did. Number 10, deliberate spending was a huge thing this year, as well as estate transitions really defined the market's new rhythm. 2025 really marked the end of impulse-driven collecting, at least for this era. I believe things happen in cycles, so I think we'll see it again. But the beginning of intentional collecting in this era it's solid. We're in it. And collectors, they didn't stop buying, but they did slow down enough to ask intentional questions. Why this work? Why this artist? Why am I collecting them now? At the same time, major estates really quietly released one-in-a-generation artworks into the market. So supply was reshaped, museum acquisitions reshaped, and collector opportunity was reshaped. And together, these forces really signal one thing, and that's that the art world is becoming more thoughtful, more strategic, and more aligned with long-term vision rather than this short-term hype that lived between the years of 2020 and 2023. Now, something really exciting happened last week that I want you guys to be a part of. Last week, we tested Dear Glory live, and it was the first and second time I'd ever went live. And it changed completely everything for me, because those lives hit a lot different. I was no longer thinking in isolation. We were thinking together in real time. And that moment revealed moments that could never happen with what I'm doing right now, pre-recording a video that's going to come out every Thursday at 10 a.m. What Dear Glory Live revealed is a constant conversation and communication between you and I, where you make me think about things that I wouldn't have thought about. And I have to respond in real time, and you respond in real time. And it creates this back and forth that just isn't available when a video is pre-recorded. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing pre-recorded videos. I'm going to continue to do them because they allow me to think through things that I want and I believe should live into the world, and continue, and that continues to create this Dear Glory library. But that Dear Glory Live creates a different type of interaction between community. And I'm going to be doing them every Tuesday at 9 a.m. and they'll be based on things that are happening in real time. So I invite you guys to join me there. But that's not to say that on a Wednesday or a Sunday or a Saturday, I might not be compelled to go live. And that's the beautiful thing. If something happens, we can go live and we could talk about it in real time. And I want to invite that space here on this Dear Glory channel. I also want to encourage you guys to write your own top 10, not the art world's top 10, but your top 10, because you had your own turning points, your own clarity moments, and your own realizations and unexpected breakthroughs this year that deserve the same attention that you give the global headlines. I have my own top 10. I have my own top 30 that I needed to reflect on. There is the art world that we observe, and then there's the art world that we are individually building, that we live in. And I've recently been doing my own version of the 30-day challenge that we're doing in the Glory Collective in the Patreon. And I want to invite you guys to do this 30-day challenge with me, where we are going on this journey to gain clarity so we have strategy for next year. This is for artists and this is for collectors who want clarity and strategy going into 2026. Now, if you've never visited the Patreon and looked around, dug around a little bit, we have 3 different tiers: Starting Glory, Building Glory, and Mastering Glory. Starting Glory is a space that allows you to take these videos that happen every Thursday and make them personal to your own artist, practice, or collecting journey. They activate the video for you. So that comes along with a voice note from me expanding on that video, as well as a worksheet that probes you and asks you questions that align with the video, but also makes the video align strategically for you. Now, Building Glory takes it a little bit different. It's where I provide frameworks, and actual strategy. I'll tell you the strategy and you apply it to your career. It's where you get active. It's where you put the strategy into your practice. The beautiful thing is that everyone can apply this. Now, when you go over to Mastering Glory, that's where we're having our one-on-ones. We're speaking one-to-one. We're looking at your career. We're looking at your collection, and we're thinking strategically about you as an isolated artist or an isolated collector in terms of where you want to go as a collector or an artist, right? So those are the 3 tiers. If you're watching this on your TV, you've been seeing the QR code pop up. Well, all you have to do is take your phone, put it to the TV on the QR code, and the link's gonna pop up and it's gonna bring you to the Patreon. If you are on your phone, just simply take a screenshot of the screen when the QR code comes up and then click down on it, hold down, and the link will come up. Make sure you guys go to the Patreon, check it out, do the 7-day free trial, see if it's somewhere that you want to be, where you want to belong, and if it's right for you. I hope to continue to build this community with you guys inside the Patreon. If I don't see you on the Patreon, I'll see you guys next Tuesday on Dear Glory Live. If I don't see you there, I'll see you next Thursday on these videos. I love y'all. Remember that the glory is in the story. You can't have the glory without the story. You need the story to create the glory. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you for being a part of my story. Peace.